Right, in these notes, you're going to learn about something called simple interest. Right? And the first thing we want to do is define some of the words that are going to be incorporated in this, and it will have another formula that you do have to memorize. Right? So I'll introduce you to that formula as well. Right? The first thing we want to do is actually define what interest is. Right? Interest is the amount of money paid or earned for the use of money. So when you borrow money from somebody, you usually have to pay them back with interest. Or if you are saving money, then it can gain interest for the use of that money. Right? So there's different situations where interest can be calculated, right? But it is always a percentage of an amount that is earned for the use of that money. Right? In the formula, you're going to see some letters pop up that stand for certain things. And one of the letters is going to stand for principal, and it is spelled just like the principal of a school, but it does not represent the same thing. Right? This principal is not a person. It is the amount of money invested or borrowed. So in your word problems and the problems you're going to be doing here, this is also the same thing as your beginning amount. It's what you started with. Okay, so when you're looking to figure out what the principal is or figure out what the principal is, it is that beginning amount that you are looking for. Right? And then along with the word there, you're going to have to also know about total amount. And it's just like it sounds. It's the total amount after interest has been included. Another phrase that they might use instead of total amount, they might say final balance. Okay, which means the exact same thing. So regardless of whether it says total amount or final balance, you're going to do the same thing. And it is the interest that you have gained or earned plus the principal. That equals the total amount. Okay, so it's not necessarily a definition, it's more of a piece of a formula that you have to remember to go back and do. All right, so for the next piece of your notes, we're going to actually take a look at the simple interest formula. Okay, it does have only letters in it, right? But it's something you've got to memorize because it will not show up on your formula sheet. Okay, so when we look at the formula, it's capital I equals lowercase p, lowercase r, lowercase t. All right, and because the p, the r, and the t are all sitting next to each other, that means p times r times t. All right, now these four letters, right, stand for stuff. The I stands for interest. So if somebody is asking you to find the interest in a problem, this is a formula you would use. The P stands for principal, and we just defined what that was. That's your beginning amount. The R stands for rate. That is your interest rate, and this is your percentage that is given in the problem. Okay, and then the T stands for time, and the time has always got to be in years. So if they give it to you in months, you've got to turn it into a decimal so that it's part of a year. Right? If they give it to you in years, then you just stick the number in. And this formula is very easy to calculate with once you know how to use it. All right, so we're going to take a look at a few examples, and then from there you'll be practicing some more in class. All right? So here are your simple interest examples. Right? And these examples are only going to have you finding the interest only. Right? And because it's money, you round to the penny spot, just like we've been doing with money. All right, so for the first problem, you have $300 at a 7.5% interest rate for 5 years. Now, many of these problems are going to be embedded into word problems, right? But these are the pieces that you need to be able to pull out from those word problems, right? So we need to find the interest. That means we're going to do I equals PRT. Okay, we don't know the I, that's what we're trying to find. The principal is the amount you're investing. We're investing $300, so that's our principal. The rate is your percentage, 7.5%. But remember, with all percentages, we have to turn them to decimals. So you take that decimal place and you scoot it 2 times to the left, and then you fill in 0.075. That's your rate. And then the time has got to be in years, right? So that would be 5 years. You'll notice that this is all multiplication. So it doesn't matter what order you multiply them in, but just go ahead and type them in your calculator. 300 times 0.075 times 5. And because it's money, you want to make it look like money, so you need the dollar sign. And it comes rounding off to $112.50. Right? So if you are investing $300 for that rate for that amount of time, then the interest you are earning off of that money is $112.50. Right? That's what the types of problems that we're doing are going to say. Right? So for the next problem, we're going to stick with the same directions. Okay? This time you are borrowing $230 from somebody, right, at 12% interest rate, right, for 8 months. Right, so let's say you borrowed this amount of money and it took you 8 months to pay them back, and the person said you now have to pay back with 12% interest. We want to know how much interest is that going to be. All right, so we're using our formula I equals PRT. Right, and once again, the I is what we're missing. Principal is your beginning amount, or what you borrowed. So in this case, it'd be the $230. The rate would be the percentage turned to a decimal, so 12% would be 0.12. Okay? And then you can't stick 8 in there because 8 would represent 8 years. So we've got to figure out what part of a year is 8 months. And because there are 12 months in a year, you're going to have to do 8 divided by 12. Okay? And that's going to come out being a decimal. But before you do that, don't even worry about the decimal. Go ahead and leave it as 8 divided by 12 in your calculations, right? Because that's where you're going to start. We're going to go ahead and do 8 divided by 12 in the calculator, then do times 0.12 times $230. That way it's all one move in the calculator and you don't have to mess anything up, because you don't want to round your decimal because then it'll affect your money. Okay, so by the time you type all of that in the calculator, it should show up as $18.40 if you've done it correctly. Again, start with 8 divided by 12, then do times 0.12, then times 230, and you will get that exact number. All right, for the next couple of examples, we're going to do total amounts. Okay, and if you recall from above, total amounts is the interest plus the principal. So once you find the interest, then you got to go back and do one more step. All right, so here are your examples that deal with this. These are the only 2 types of problems that you're going to have to deal with in terms of filling numbers into the problem. Right? There is one other type that we'll take a look at in class, right? But for the big gist of it, this is what we're dealing with. Right? So for the first one, if you have $660 at 5.25% for 2 years. Okay. We want to know the total amount. After those 2 years, how much money do you have all together? Well, you've got to find the interest first, because you've got to be able to take that number and include it. So you have to do I equals PRT. The P is your 660. The R would be your decimal moved over 2 places. So that would be 0.0525. And the time is for 2 years. So once you get that calculation, that's going to tell you the interest, right? And that comes out to be $69.30. Okay, but that's not the answer. The answer is asking you, or the problem is asking you, what is the total amount that this person now has all together, right? So you're going to have to take, TA stands for total amount. That's the easy way to do this. $660, which is the principal, plus $69.30, which is that interest, because it's principal plus interest. That's how you're going to get your total amount. When you do add those up, your total amount for this person, okay, is going to be $729.30. So after 2 years of leaving their money in the bank and getting interest off of it, they now have $729.30 when they started with $660. That's the nice part of investing money, is it gains money the longer you leave it in an account. Okay, so the next problem we're going to do is another similar one, still total balance or total amount. Okay. This is number 2. Okay. And this time you've got $385 at 12.6% for 9 months. So we're back to giving an example with the months. Okay, and we want to know what the total amount would be 9 months later, right, with all this interest involved. So the first thing we want to do is calculate the interest. Principal is $385. right? 12.6% is going to be 0.126, because remember you have to take that decimal and move it 2 places. Okay, and then for 9 months, you can't stick 9 in because that's not years. So because 9 months are out of 12, we'd have to do 9 divided by 12. Right? You don't need to worry about reducing it or turning to a decimal. Go ahead in your calculator, type in 9 divided by 12, and then work your way backwards. Times 0.126 times 385. It will give you the most accurate answer you can ever get. Okay, and so the interest for this problem is $36.38. But that's not your final answer. The final answer wants to know what is the total amount, right? So again, you go back and you add the principal and the interest. Okay, so that'd be $385, which is the principal, plus $36.38. Again, it's principal plus interest, gives you the total amount, right? So in this case, the total amount after 9 months of investing this money or borrowing this money, right, is $421.38 rather than the $385 you started with. All right, we're going to continue to practice more with these two types of problems, finding the interest and finding the total amount, and then I will show you how to do a problem where other things are missing besides the interest and total amount in class.